Hey guys, welcome to the very first episode of the Inside Edit. This is something that I have been wanting to do for so long, and forgive me, but it's a scary place. It's like I'm a sensitive girly and I'm scared of the internet, but you know what? I feel like I have a lot of value to add and share some of the things that I've been through in my life and my career, personally and professionally, that have gotten me to here. A lot of these stories I'm going to tell you, you might not know about, the things that were going on behind the scenes in my life that I've never shared. And some of it, obviously, you've heard me talk about things like the Hoffman process and insight seminars and things that have tremendously helped me in my life and my journey, as well as my 20 years of sobriety mixed with this big career that I've been juggling for the last, 20 years, essentially. So for me, I felt like a piece of my soul was missing from being able to share all of these experiences and try to help people. I think it was ingrained in me in a very early age. I got sober when I was 17 years old. I was a senior in high school and a huge principal of the program of AA, although it is an anonymous program. I am a member. And the biggest part of it is once you're through the steps is to help other people. And so I think it's been deeply ingrained in me since I was 17 years old. And the knowledge of, sometimes when you're going through a hard time, the best thing you can do is actually to help someone else. And that's just been with me for a long time. And I've been through so much, and I've just full of resource and tools that I really want to share with you guys. So that's really what this podcast is about. I will also bring on people, as I've mentioned, that will help share those stories. So let's basically get into it. I feel like some of my most asked questions are, how did you get started? How did this all begin? Most people only know me for my styling, but obviously my life is so much bigger than just that. And I thought I would share my story. So essentially, the biggest thing I think that shaped the early chapters and the early days of my life and really trickled into my adult life was what happened to me when I was in the third grade. When I was a young kid, I was bullied in the most horrific, most awful, most scary way from the time I was in the third grade until the day that I graduated high school. I don't know why. I don't know why it happened to me. I don't know. And I don't say that from like a victim mindset. I've done a lot of inner work and I've tried to understand what my part is in that, but I just don't think I had one. I think it was like my soul's curriculum, and it was just the beginning of like a rough road. And really, I share that to say, for so long I was so guarded because of the bullying, because of my inability to connect with other people. I felt like I missed the guidebook that everyone else got to life. Like everyone else knew how to like be, and I felt like there was this giant hole missing inside of me. And I now acknowledge that as like my alcoholism and my drug addiction, and this just sort of, we talk about this like God-sized hole within ourselves. And it really amplified it as a bullied kid. And then as I've done all this work on myself and realized that I'm actually extremely empathic and extremely sensitive, and obviously that was with me at that young age, like this poor little girl who is probably so sensitive and empathic to these feelings and why is this happening to me. I really shut down. That's just the bottom line. And drugs and alcohol, this is not what makes me an addict, but I think drugs and alcohol became the solution to those feelings of feeling like I don't know where to go. I found a couple people that I could fit in with that all happened to party, and I went down a very dark road very fast in high school. I found friends who were partying and, truthfully doing a lot of cocaine. And I can't believe I'm saying that to you, but I found myself heavily addicted to cocaine by the time I was 16 years old. And thankfully, by the time I was 17, my family literally saved my life and put me into treatment. But I think those early days were really about not feeling safe and like not feeling like I had anywhere to go. And those feelings have followed me long into my adult life, And part of one of my worries about starting this podcast is I took a big break from sharing on social media because I was experiencing online bullying, and it was really triggering to that little girl, who grew up like this. And I'm sure people don't know that. And again, not in a victim way, like don't say anything mean to me, but Also, I think the internet forgets that we're all just like these little beings walking through earth with this pain and this like suffering that no one is exempt from. And we all carry different childhoods and different experiences with us. And when I was getting bullied now as like an adult, online, it really, really just hit so deep in me. And I've had to do a lot of work of like, I was just saying to my crew in this room right now is like, no matter what I do, someone's not going to like me. And that's okay, I guess. It's still really hard for me because of that like little girl who just wanted to be liked, but I can't make everyone happy. And so I just felt like I have so much to offer, and that's why I'm here today. So, the beginning of my sobriety was a crazy journey. It was not something that I ever in a million years thought that would become like who I was or my life. I knew that I had a problem while it was happening, but I think I thought that like one day I would snap my fingers and I would just snap out of it and go back to like being normal, and not being drug addicted. I thought I had a choice, and then I quickly realized that I didn't, and I went down a really dark path really, really fast, like I said, and I was sent to rehab. I spent 4 months in a rehab center, and thank God my family like saved me from that. I don't think I would have made it if they had taken me out sooner. I think that full 4 months was really needed for me to like recalibrate. So when I got out of there, I immediately got connected with AA, and I've been a member ever since. I think I pretty much did everything my sponsor told me to do in the first year. I really, really dedicated myself to my program, to not going out. I wasn't around drugs and alcohol. I just really put my head down. I did the work, and I started to like come out of this really dark place. Coming out of that, I was able to start seeing that I had options, and things started happening for me in my early sobriety that were sort of like these glimmers of God or universe or whatever. I'll tell you guys this one story. It was really crazy. I had this counselor's assistant in rehab, and she was like my light. I really had a hard time living with a bunch of girls after, like I mentioned, the bullying. It was really hard for me to trust women. And I was in this place, by myself essentially, and this one counselor just took like a liking to me, and we just had this like instant soul connection. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but I just felt like I knew this woman, and like she was my person. She would sneak me extra cigarettes, and I don't smoke anymore, by the way, but at the time. And she would we started a garden together. Like here I was, this little fucking drug addict 17-year-old like gardening with her, but I just loved this woman, and I never knew why. Like she just was anyway. So one day we're talking, and she mentions that she had used to live in New York City. And I said, oh, that's where I grew up. Like, where did you live? And she said the address. And I was like, I thought like my head exploded. And I was like, what did you just say? You just said my address. What? And she goes, yeah, no, I lived at such and such address 18 years ago. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, but that's the building I grew up in. I don't understand. And it turned out in her active addiction, she lived in the apartment directly below the one that I was born in. And then 17 years later, she's here. I have the chills. I usually cry when I tell this story, but here she was 17 years later taking care of me. And it just felt like this moment between me and my higher power of like, you were on the right path. And my parents remembered her, and like, it was really, really crazy. And it felt like, I felt like years later, what really hit me was like my higher power or God or whatever you want to call it, like loved me enough for that experience to happen for both of us. It was really powerful. And so I ended up getting into FIT and like the nights and weekends program. I was into fashion. I showed up to these classes even in my most active addiction. I would show up on Saturdays and take classes at FIT, and I would take them in the summer. And I don't know how or why I was able to I basically was non-functioning, but I always made it to these classes. And so I'm in rehab, and I got in, and it didn't make sense. I shouldn't have even graduated high school, and they let me in a part-time capacity. And I think I was like, okay, God, like, all right, I feel like we're heading in the right direction, and things like that started to happen for me where I started to trust the process. So I was basically working full time at Bloomingdale's, actually on 59th Street, which any of you who've been following me for a while know that a few years ago I ended up designing a collection for them, which was such a crazy full circle moment. But I basically started my little fashion career working at Bloomingdale's, going to FIT part-time until they let me in full-time. And then my dad was a producer on this TV show called Naomi Judd's New Morning. It was like a faith-based talk show. And he begged the stylist to give me a chance as an intern. And he said, like, if she sucks, please fire her, but could you give her a chance? And I remember being so annoyed. I just wanted to enjoy my summer. I was newly home from rehab, and I think I was 6 months sober, and was just like, what the hell is going on? And the program really taught me to just show up when opportunities arise. Like when you say you're going to do something, to do it. I showed up on set this very first day, and I just could not believe my eyes. Honestly, I couldn't believe that this was like a real job and that people got to do this. I had really no idea. And I was so grateful for the opportunity, and I just worked my little butt off, and she ended up keeping me on. People have said things like, oh, you're a Nepo baby. I promise you I'm not. We grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment. My dad gave me an amazing opportunity, but that does not make me who I am today. I'm sorry, it doesn't. I think being given opportunities is a blessing, but how you stay in the room is really the lesson, And I think what I learned was that every opportunity can lead you to the next one. My dad used to say things to me like, every person might know the next person that can hire you, So always keep up your relationships and try to network and get to the next thing. You guys, this was like before social media. This is before stylists were what they were. There was no way to find stylists. Like, I used to sit on Craigslist and try to find jobs. I had 2 friends who were production designers, which is like the art department, the people who build the sets. And I begged them to hire me, to let me come on set with them and to try to meet like the directors. One of the first directors was Anthony Mandler. He has been a friend ever since. I was literally a child when I met this guy and was just so hungry and desperate. And he helped me get on jobs. I think he hired me to style dancers at some point. I met Rob and Marielle, who were at the time styling Rihanna, and I just was like, again, one thing sort of led to the next. And I mean, I remember being like in the art department in the middle of a night shoot. I think I got electrocuted and like thrown through a wall. Like, I just didn't even care. I just wanted to be there. I didn't know other ways to get around these people other than to do that. So really one job just led to the next. I started doing dancers. And then I started to think that I needed to move out here. Truthfully, I was running from a really horrible relationship that got me here, which I'm so grateful for. Like, thank God for that guy who literally chased me out of New York City. My mom helped me break my lease on my apartment, and she paid the money to get me out of here. She was like, you just have to get out of this place and get away from this guy. And I moved into this sober dude's house. He had an extra bedroom. I showed up in LA with 5 suitcases. It's everything I owned. And I don't know, no money in the bank. I ordered a bed from IKEA, and that's how I got my start. Before I moved there, I was going back and forth a little bit. I knew a stylist who would bring me out sometimes to work with her. I would sleep on her couch. I would take her son to football practice. I just was trying to be helpful in any way I could so that I could be out here, honestly. I did all kinds of crazy odd jobs. I remember assisting the stylist and doing all the sorting and returns in her garage, like her detached garage in like the pitch black dark. Like, I just was down to do anything. I think one of the most known breaks that I've gotten was a video commissioner called me one day and said, do you want to style Janelle Monae? And I was like, of course I do. And the job was 2 days later, which was totally crazy. It was the BET Awards. I had never worked with her, never met her, and just ended up pulling I'm skipping over a lot of the early stuff, but I just feel like, let me get to the good stuff. I met Janelle, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. She was on vocal rests for our very first fitting. She couldn't talk to me. We were writing each other notes, and it was just the right fit, and we ended up working together for 6 years. And she and her team really, really made me the stylist that I am today. I think everything was so thought through and so perfect. And I don't mean to like toot my own horn, but it was grueling work. It was a big team effort, and I learned how to play amongst other creatives and let other people have input, and also learning how to like, no, I really believe this for myself. Like, this is the right answer. I'll never forget her Oscars gown in 2017. This was years into working together, but she was so unsure about that dress. And she looked at me and she was like, Maeve, are you sure? And I was like, yes, Janelle, I am sure. Like, this is the dress. And it like completely blew up. Like, was best dress, still on lists. People still talk about it. It was something I learned over the years of just like really going within and trusting myself and trusting my vision and knowing that I was right, and that takes time and effort and really, really learning how to trust yourself. I definitely came into this industry very hungry, but also very naive, and unfortunately ended myself up in a few situations that were a bit unprofessional or unsafe. This was before the Me Too movement and before people were really talking about the inappropriate men in this town and unfortunately the darkness that does occur. And this was before I had someone like an agent looking out for me. So I unfortunately experienced some of the darker side of this industry as well. I think my point of bringing this up is part of all of the walls that I built up around myself were for these reasons. I remember also a producer, for instance, trying to like fuck me over on my rate and not pay me. And then I ran into him at the mall and he was buying Louis Vuitton luggage. And it was the first time where I was like, hey, bro, I was like, you're going to pay me. Like, you can afford all this luggage. You're going to fucking pay me, And I didn't have people like advocating for me and protecting me and fighting for me. And what was so hard in the beginning was, and again, like, this little kid who didn't have, like, my parents didn't advocate for me. They didn't stick up for me and pull me out of that school and keep me safe. Unfortunately, I've had to like really work through that. But I think it's like part of why, I think a lot of people for a long time thought like, oh, Maeve is scary or she's not nice. And you know what? There was a time in my life where that's probably true, but I was carrying a lot of wounds and a lot of things that happened to me. And I was just trying to protect myself, and I think that came across as like the tough girl, the strong girl. And unfortunately, I had to be that, but I didn't want to be that. That's not really who I am. And it's not really who like my soul is. But it was like a self-preservation. Like, I just have to protect myself because honestly, hard shit has happened to me. This episode is really just trying to give you guys like a rough outline of my life. But obviously, as these episodes go on, I'm going to dig deeper into these subjects. I'm going to bring therapists on. So if you have any questions or want to talk about things in a deeper way, leave a comment below or send me a DM. So after I started working with Janelle for a few years, I was really eager to get an agent. Obviously, having someone to fight for your rates and fight for your budgets for you is the ideal situation. So like, as the creative, I can just focus on getting the job done, and someone else's job is talking about money, which I hate so much. So I fought super hard to get this agent. I took a meeting with my now agent who was at a different company. This is a crazy story. And they had an office in LA and then an office in New York, but he was in New York. And he said, oh, I'll let you know next time I'm in LA. And I was just like so eager to get this done. I was like, oh, I'm actually going to be in New York next week. Do you think we could do it next week? I flew myself. Like, I am broke, okay? I have no money. Flew myself home to New York to take this meeting with this guy because I was just desperate. And we had this great meeting. We had this great energy. I just was like, love this. And thought for sure that we were going to work together. And then he said, I just don't think like right now is the time, and let's keep in touch and stay in touch as your career evolves. And I was devastated. I was like, oh, I thought I had such a good rapport. What ended up happening was that company was going out of business, and he didn't want to tell me, and he didn't want to drag me into it. But I didn't know that. I thought I was just getting like rejected, And so 6 months later, he called, or I heard or something that he was starting an agency. And I had someone that we had in common, again, with the networking. And just, I think when people hear your name from different angles, that's like very helpful in a way. And so I had like 2 people email him or call him or something, and then we took a new meeting. And I was one of the first people to sign with my now agent, Kent Belden, at the only agency. I think I was like the top first 3 agents that they have. Now they have hundreds. They have offices all over the world, and I'm so grateful that, I've been a part of their agency since the beginning. I'm definitely like the pioneer of the only agency, but I love that, and we've become, partners and business partners and done all kinds of amazing things together. So one day my agent called me and they're like, there's this girl, Haley Baldwin, and she would like to have a coffee with you and see if, it's a good fit. And I'm like, okay, she's so cute, like she was 18 at the time or 19 and still Baldwin. And I was like, I would love to meet her. And I took this meeting with her at I'll never forget, the SLS hotel. We had a coffee and she was so cute and so innocent and sweet. And she still is, by the way. Hasn't changed much. And we just immediately clicked. And I think 3 days later, we did a fitting. And the next day, I ended up going to Paris with her. And it was like the very beginning of our working relationship. I had the teeniest, tiniest little office, shithole office on Sunset, which is actually, if you've been in LA, her Saint Laurent billboard years later was like on top of that office building. It was just such a crazy full circle moment of like where we met and where I was able to bring her to. I'm so blessed for that relationship. We have, we had the most incredible working synergy and chemistry, and she's still an amazing friend, and I'm so grateful for that experience. One of the craziest things that happened with Haley that I just never anticipated, and a lot of people would ask us or ask me was this a master plan, and I'm like, no. This was crazy. This was the beginning of street style. People weren't really talking about what celebrities were wearing outside. They were talking about red carpet. They were talking about, press appearances, but not what people were wearing outside. And I'll never forget, she wore this little green velvet dress with her hair up in a little bow and these little booties. Like looking back on it now, it's like it was such a whatever outfit. And it ended up on Vogue's best look of the week or whatever. And it was the first time that I remember Vogue, it has to be the Met Gala to be that, look of the week or a huge red carpet. And here she was just walking down the street. And something in that moment I feel changed where the media really started to pay attention to what these girls were wearing. And what I love so much about that is these were attainable things for other girls. This wasn't just I think you look at an image on a red carpet, and I think this is why I love street style so much, is it's recreatable, it's relatable, it's aspirational, whereas a red carpet, it just feels a little I'm never going to get to wear a gown. Yeah, sure, that actress looks amazing, but that's never really going to be me. Obviously, some people, sure, but what was so cool about it is I remember being at One Oak with her, and I looked around and all the girls in the club were dressed like her. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And it wasn't a I made it moment, because I never feel I let my ego get in the way of it was kind of hard to even believe it was happening. But again, it wasn't some master plan. It wasn't we're going to, do all this street style and she's going to be it just, I think, really happened naturally. I think that, the funny thing about the internet is while I was probably on one of the highest points in my career, I was personally going through a really, really hard time, very transformational time, but probably the gnarliest breakup I had ever gone through. And it really changed the course of my life. And I'm so grateful for it. But I was literally, I'll never forget, this boyfriend and I were officially over, and I'm at Haley and Justin's wedding. And here we are, the most beautiful day, the most loving, beautiful day ever. And I was so freaking sad, and I was so happy for my friend, of course, and over the moon. But that butterflies in your stomach, sad, I can't believe my guy's not here, he was supposed to be here, kind of heartbreak. I think people didn't know that I was going through that at the time. Maybe obviously my friends did. But what really happened for me was this relationship and this breakup was it was very bizarre. It was the most loving ending I have ever experienced. And I would wish this for everyone, because it was we loved each other so deeply, but we just weren't meant to continue. We weren't meant to be together. I think some people call this your twin flame, the person that changes your life or shows you what you need to see about yourself. this guy was the light that I needed to see to start making serious changes in myself. And he suggested I go to this place called Insight Seminars. And this was my first real deep dive into the inner work. And I was like 10 years sober at this point. And had done therapy on and off, but never took it as seriously as like this moment. Like this was the moment where, you know, for the last 10 years, I have been really focused on myself. And when I talk about those walls that I built up as a kid, this is when it all really started to like come down. I did this Insight seminar. It's here in LA. It's like a weekend program. You go home at night. It's like a pretty low lift. But the second one, there's 3. The second one was life-changing. And it was the first time that I saw how this childhood trauma and this bullying had really affected who I became. And again, going back to the like, you know, I think this persona of myself that I felt like I had to put out of like being tough and like you can't hurt me really started to come down. And I really realized too how I was calling that same energy into my life with other people. And as this relationship was ending, I was like giving birth to myself in a way. And it was a very transformational time. It was so sad. And then at the same time, we found our now therapist, Dr. Sadiki, and he was referred to me from a friend. And this friend was seeing him. And I watched her go through this was Demi Moore. We've talked about this. She's talked about this. It's not like secret information. She was seeing this doctor and she had gone through a really, really crazy time. Her body was breaking down, emotionally going through a lot. And she started talking in like a completely new way. Like, and I was so interested. I'm like, where are you learning this? Like, who are you learning this from? And she says this doctor's name. And 6 months later, when this boyfriend and I were going through this, I was like, I think we got to see this therapist of yours. And she connected us, and he had like a super long wait list, and he just immediately took us. And we started doing therapy together and then doing it separately. And this man completely changed the course of my life and the person that I am today. I will definitely be having him on the show for you guys to understand more. But the way that there's like mind-body connection, I quickly realized I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis because I had shut down and held so much stuff inside. My body was literally shutting down. My thyroid was fucked up. And he helped me heal like literally from the inside out. Started healing my body, started healing my mental health, and really my entire life started to change, even though it was still so sad. I think one of the biggest takeaways I learned from him was nothing is happening to you, it's happening for you. And when you come from that place, especially when you've been through a lot in your life and hard things have happened, you start to see that I'm not a victim to my life, and hard things happen, and that's true. But using those things to fuel your growth or help someone else, I guess, was what I really took from that. And I have this Rumi quote tattooed on my arm: out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, and I'll meet you there. And this was something that Dr. S taught me. And it's just like learning to be in the middle of the surfboard when life is throwing shit at you, you know, and just trying to learn how to just stay in the middle and not make everything so big. Like maybe everything doesn't need to matter. I'm still working on this, by the way, because people leave me one mean comment and I'm like spiraling for the day. But I think that, you know, this experience and every experience is like divinely given to us, like as a spiritual curriculum, and that I really have learned to believe that. I think during this time I got really deeply connected to the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. For me, I call it all the things, but I don't think I would have been able to get through it if it wasn't for that. I think really what that relationship showed me was like, he showed me how to get back to my true self, and it didn't include him, and that's okay, you know? And it was really loving and a really beautiful ending, and I'm so grateful for that experience, like in my life. I would not be who I am today without it. So out of this place of like new beginnings and a new way of being and just like really wanting to share everything that I had learned, and wanting to use my platform for good and talk about how I was watching, clients getting bullied online in such a crazy way, as well as myself. Like these bizarre things, these stories would get made up, and then we'd get, thousands of comments of people telling me to go kill myself, like for completely made up. And like, I don't really want to get into the details of it today. Maybe another episode we can talk about it, but completely made up stories. And you would just kind of have to like turn your comments off or like let it ride and just let it pass. And I just found it to be so crazy how easy it was for people to be so negative to people they don't even know, and watching my clients go through it, like I said. And so I knew that I wanted to start a brand, and I knew that I wanted to put more good into the world. And so I came up with my brand, The Local Love Club. If you've ever bought it, I love you. I thank you. It was such a passion project. It was something that I completely self-funded myself. It was cut and sew, like the most perfect sweatpants, sweatshirts, tank tops, all the like basics, cozy, with a message about spreading love and kindness. Not really about bullying, but just I thought the opposite was more just about spreading love, and using this brand as an opportunity to spread as much of it as possible. And I've never talked about this, but the craziest thing happened. I woke up the morning of launch, and I had been working on this for a year. The brand was trademarked. I owned an LLC. I owned the trademark, all the things that I needed to do, the Instagram, the TikTok, everything. We had done our due diligence. And I wake up the morning of my launch, and Vogue was kind enough to post about this brand. And I wake up and there's like so many comments on the TikTok, and I'm like, what's happening? My social media manager at the time for the brand was like, we kind of have a problem. I'm like, okay. She goes, there's a small brand in another country claiming you stole their idea. And I was like, what? This person went on TikTok and shared that I stole their name and likeness or their general idea of their company. I then received thousands of hateful comments, death threats, boycott the brand, you should kill yourself. How could you do that to like the small guy, like as if like the big influencer like was stealing ideas. Like I said, did my due diligence. I had no idea that this brand existed. And it was so devastating that here I am trying to put out a brand about love and kindness. And this other brand, which is allegedly doing the same, is essentially inciting bullying and negativity. And I just was like, wow, like, damn, and I cried for days. And my clients were like, just give it a couple days, it'll pass, give it a couple, and it did, and it died down. But it was just like, damn, like what a way to start. And it still did amazing. And I still wished them well, and I still, reached out kindly, and it just was not met with kindness back, and that's fine. And I never addressed it publicly because I felt like giving it more weight would just make it worse. And I really, to this day, wish them the best, but it was a really crazy experience on the start of what was supposed to be like a beautiful thing. One of my next little business ventures is something I thought of during COVID. So as the world was ending, no one knows what's next. This is like totally unprecedented. No one knows how we're going to make money. How do we be together? How do we be on set? I had this idea because the number one question that people would ask me is like, how do I become you? And I thought, here's an opportunity, again, to be helpful, but also to start a business. Like I obviously have to survive this too. And let's create a curriculum and let's create a class where I can teach people on Zoom how to become stylists, because essentially the world will open again eventually. I spent, weeks working on this curriculum with my assistant Rachel, with my agents, with, other stylists sort of weighed in, and we created this incredible program. It was a three Saturdays in a row class on Zoom. And we safely had, 3 people in my office, like filming it on Zoom, like proper production. I didn't just like lift up a computer and, like spiel some shit. We had like, a full curriculum, full cue cards. I was teaching this class. It was honestly like such an amazing experience. Later on, we ended up doing it in person while simultaneously streaming it on Zoom so that more people could join us if they couldn't come to LA. We filmed this at Hubble Studios downtown. Shout out to Hubble. And it was incredible. They lined up around the block. I mean, it was great, like hours before class started because people wanted to sit in the front. And then we had this incredible 3 or 4 hour, I can't remember, class. And then I stayed after and, met everybody. And to this day, people come up to me and say, this class changed my life. It's funny. So one day I was eating at this restaurant and this girl, I could tell was wanted to come and talk to me. And she ended up coming over and she was like, hi, I just don't mean to be weird, but I took your class. I learned so much. And now I'm Robin Marielle's intern, which is funny because 20 years ago, I was their assistant. Such a weird full circle moment. And then cut to, I'm at Coachella this past year, and the same girl comes up to me and she's like, I just have to tell you that I style, X and Y, Z clients now. And it was just the most incredible, testimony to this really worked and this really helped people. And I was just in Mexico with my family for the 4th of July, and this girl came up to me in the pool. She's like, this is weird, but I took your class. People literally from all over the place talk about this class. And so there's something new in the works. Stay tuned for that. I think one of the things that really shifted during COVID was a lot of brand deals and a lot of opportunities were coming to stylists. I don't know why it was during that time specifically, but it really did open up new avenues for us. And I was given a lot of amazing opportunities. I started working with Revolve around that time and doing YouTube for them and showing people how to style different. And I just, the Bloomingdale's thing happened and a BCBG collection happened. And I was getting all of these opportunities. And I just think, other than Rachel Zoe, there wasn't a lot of stylists who were sort of branching out and doing different things. Like, how dare you get out of your box of just being a stylist, And obviously we know that clients move on. And at one point I had this realization of I can't rely on other people to survive. I can't have my whole entire financial dependence be on other people. I have to be able to support and care for myself. And so these deals are important because it makes me autonomous. It makes me able to be financially free no matter whether the client stays or goes, And I think some people took that as who does she think she is? Which is funny because in this day and age, I think, people outwardly are supportive and whatever, but I think a little bit of it were publicists were who does she think she is? And I still, no matter what, want to be on my hands and knees fixing someone's train. There is nothing I want more than to be a stylist and to be supporting women in that way, because I really see it that way. I really see it as this opportunity to be a vessel for them, to help hold them up and support them in a much bigger way than just clothes. And the relationships that I've had have been rooted in love and friendship and respect. And I think those have been the most long-term. But I do think some people didn't know what to do with me because I had all these other things going on. But saying it on the record now, there's nothing I want to do more than to do, the styling part. That is who I am. There's nothing that makes me happier. So I was definitely around 34, 35, going through a life shift again and just feeling as much as I love living in the middle of this working environment in the middle of West Hollywood, I am sick of talking about work everywhere I go. Every restaurant I would go to, someone would bring up work, or any coffee or anything. I just felt because it's Hollywood, people want to talk about it, or I don't know. I needed a break. I needed some separation from work and personal life and socializing. And I had started to make this amazing friend group on the West Side in Venice. I was going to a lot of AA meetings over there, and I just needed a change of pace. I had this bizarre flood happen in my condo here in town. And I remember thinking, should I hit the road for the summer and go travel, Or should I just rent an Airbnb at the beach and have like a new experience for the summer? Because I couldn't live in my house. And it was so annoying and so inconvenient, but I was like, okay, God, like I'm going to just trust that this is happening, for me. And so I rented this place and like I had the best summer. I had the most fun. I had a new experience. I had a completely different experience of living here. And it was just the best thing for me. And so when my condo finally got fixed, I think I spent like maybe a month back there, and I was like, no, I need to move. So I found a place in Venice and I moved my life over there. And it's funny, years ago, a psychic had said to me, your husband is in the water. And I was like, okay, like I don't know what that means, but okay. And I kept joking, like I loved the surfer energy. I loved the like laid back energy of the West Side. And again, not being with someone in this industry and just like a bit more normal, I guess. And along came my fucking husband, Zach, and he was a surfer and he had lived in Malibu for 30 friggin' years and was in the water every single day. So that psychic was right, which is so crazy to think of. I can't believe I even remembered it, but I did. And I met my husband and, life changed. And it's an incredible story that I can't wait to share with you guys. He is my next guest on episode 2. And there's a lot we haven't told you. Obviously, you guys know about Zach and I's story. There are definitely parts of it you don't know that we are going to share for the first time, which I pray to God is going to be okay. But, we've been through a lot. And as most of you know, we lost our house this last January in the Palisades fire. And like yet again, faced with an unimaginable loss and another like God's strongest soldiers list, I gotta say. Like I'm fucking unsubscribing. Like I am so tired. But it's funny, at our wedding, the toasts from my side were all about how strong I am, about my resilience, about how Zach and I have been through so much. And, we hope from this point on it's going to be smooth sailing. Like, I'm not kidding. Every toast was about how strong I was. And I'm like, dude, I am so sick of being the strong girl. I want to be in my, like, soft girl era, okay? We'll talk more about this in other episodes, and I just really wanted to give you guys sort of like a brief overline of who I am and what my life has looked like and sort of what I've been through and getting to the other side. But I will say I'm still working through getting to the other side of this part. I do feel like I've learned that the house and the home is what mattered. Like the stuff didn't matter, which is crazy to say as a stylist, and having pieces that were irreplaceable and gifts that were just I will never get back, and pieces that are memorable in my wedding gown and, things like that. That is sad and it is hard. But really the takeaway was like not having a home and yet again not feeling safe is the part that we're sort of grappling with. And being in a marriage and both people having kind of two different experiences within the same experience and holding space for each other to do that is really interesting and something that we've been sort of working through. So can't wait to continue to share with you guys, to dive deeper into these subjects. If there's anything that you want to know more about, please, again, leave it in the comments or send me a message on Instagram or TikTok. And next week, we will have my gorgeous husband for episode 2. Thank you guys so much for joining me on my first episode of The Inside Edit. We will be releasing a new episode every Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts or watch my cute little face on YouTube. Love you guys. Bye.